Hey everyone, it's Chrissy and Lex, and this episode we have Carol Feeley with us. Hello.
Hello.
I actually can't pronounce the last part of your name, so can you say your whole name?
It's pretty straightforward. It's Carol Feeley-Vario.
Very nice.
There
Very
you go.
nice.
There you
So
go.
yeah, I'm really happy that we get a chance to talk to you. I have had your name on the list for a while, and it just dawned on me a couple weeks ago to be like, we just need to get her on and get it done. Let's do it.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm excited about it. So any chance I get to talk to you guys is good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. So your background is super impressive. We were talking offline, and we were talking about the vast difference with like your construction side of the world, and then how it is like very beautifully blended into AV, and then what you're doing now, which is incredible. So can you just give the audience a summary version of what you were doing beforehand and what you're doing now and how kind of awesome it is?
Sure. So I started, I'm from New York City. I'm a Queens girl through and through, 718 right here. I went to Catholic schools all through my life. So I never had really great theater programs or really great, it was math and science and religion, right? And if you weren't getting into any of those, which I was certainly not getting into those, there wasn't a lot, right, of opportunity there. But I did trip upon, in my high school was good for performance and music, and there was a lighting program in my high school. And I think someone told me at one point that girls don't do lighting, and I was like, really? So that degree is in lighting.
Good for you.
I went to Sony Purchase. I have a degree in lighting design. And then I started working I did freelance for a long time. I was a freelance lighting designer. I did rock and roll shows. I worked at a lot of clubs in New York. You're out there shaking it for a long time. And then I had a really awful tour in Mexico. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. And I started getting into sort of the construction side and the systems integration side of lighting. At the time, I worked for PRG, and I had an absolutely wonderful, incredible mentor who I miss terribly. He passed about 8 years ago, and he was such a great friend. And really, we really leaned on each other, to a certain extent. Like being a mentor, being a mentee, is actually more of a triangle than a one-sided, lean. So he and I just work great together, and it got my curiosity into how things are actually built. I grew up in a construction family in New York, right? So I knew a little bit about how the sausage is made, right? Like I knew a little bit about how things got built, but being on construction sites, working in the integration team, I decided to go back to grad school and get a master's in construction management. So that's
that one.
So I went to Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken because my office at the time was in Secaucus. So I was already driving to New Jersey. So it was a way to beat traffic, to be honest with you.
Pretty common for New Yorkers and New Jerseyans to keep flip-flopping back.
Yeah, it's just a bridge, right? Yep. It's $20 bridge now, but it's still just a bridge.
No way, each way?
Yeah. Well, no, one way, actually. It's just you pay going into New York. You don't pay fleeing New York into New Jersey.
Can you get like a toll thing?
Yeah, there's an easy pass. You can get a discounted toll, but it's still, I think it's $18, I think, at that point. And traffic was bad, right? Coming back from New Jersey into New York. So it was actually nice to go to class after work because I was like, oh, I can beat traffic, right? Like I wait out traffic for a little while. So I was 32 when I graduated with my master's. And at that point, I started working more in the construction field. I worked for general contractors. I worked for lighting controls manufacturers who worked in hospitality. And I worked for an HGTV show at one point. And then I got one of my dream jobs, which was to work with Rod Hickey at Big Show Construction Management. Wow. And one of the things that Rod did was he took entertainment concepts and translated them into architecture and into theater building. So the animated props that you see in the Wynn Hotel in Macau, we built those. Like we managed those, the build and the installation of those. And there's some other great projects. We did a lot of museum and interactive installations, which as a kid growing up in New York City, right? New York City was my playground. Museums. My 21st birthday, my dad and I went to the Met and walked around the Met for a while and got tea and then raced each other up the rocks in Central Park. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was kind
You're
of
really integrated into that landscape.
yeah, and it means so much to me to be able to do that. And one of my, one of the paramount projects for me will always be the Statue of Liberty Museum.
Wow.
I was the project manager for Diversified at that time, and that's my baby. I could still walk around that museum and tell you exactly how everything is,
love
set up.
it.
So cool.
All the great stories and the crazy
There's
pictures.
so much like enjoyment being able to do that. Like sometimes when I go back to some of my installations that I have that I was part of, I'm just like, yeah, that was so fun. We did this, we did that. And it's just like this connection to the building, to the staff, to the whole event that week that everybody, for the most part, remembers. And it's just like a moment of pride to be like, yeah, I was part of that. It was pretty cool.
There's a sense of ownership when you see things you've worked on. And my dad, having been in the construction industry, he was a surveyor in the 60s and 70s. And then he went into, he was an electrician after that. But, and he worked on the Trade Center, the original towers, and he worked on so many giant buildings in New York that were part of the building boom in the 60s and 70s in New York. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh, I worked on that building.
Yeah.
And it's a joke in my family that I worked on the building. And I remember my mom at one point, who is my sainted mother, who has suffered through so many construction conversations. And she basically was, one day she was telling me about one of her friend's kids who was going to the school in Astoria. And I think I built the theater in that school. And I said, oh, I worked on that building. And she goes, no, not you. But you leave a little part of you in each one of those buildings. And every time you go, it's like a time machine. You just remember, oh, yeah, that was funny, that time that happened.
So your day today consists of what today? Like all of that incredible background. What is it that you get to do today?
So right now I'm a senior program manager at Diversified. And AV integration is one of those things, going from construction and taking my knowledge of construction and taking my knowledge of project management, which is what my specificity is, and turning that into how can we fully realize AV projects and large scale AV projects at a company like Diversified, right? Like we all know how to do conference rooms, right? We know how to do smaller installations, but how do we do the big integration projects? How do we do stadiums? How do we do cruise ships? Right. How do we do large event spaces in corporate rollout structures, right? So there's so many challenges, and there's so many struggles and so many facets you have to handle in construction. And it's its own world, right? You have to be able to speak the jargon, and you have to be able to go in there and be confident enough to stand around a bunch of somewhat gruff construction workers. The industry is changing a lot, I will say, but there's a couple of good stories I tell about being called TV girl on construction sites.
Nice. Hey, that's better than other things.
I've been called worse. Sure. Usually not in the beginning though. Or being referred to as the female. That one always gets me.
Oh, ew.
Don't do that. Just call me Carol, please. That's all I.
Just call me Carol. Just call me my actual given name. How about that?
What a concept.
So with some of the diversity that you have in your background, what are some like maybe lessons or ideas, concepts, mindsets that keep you going today that you maybe developed? I think one that I'm hearing you talk about is that there needs in your mind a sense of ownership to the projects that you work on, to really be successful, and then also a pride in the end result, because a lot of eyes are on it. A lot of troubleshooting was part of it. It's basically a design build, for lack of better words. And, there's an ownership aspect of it. So, if there was a mindset or two or a lesson that came from, the journey that you've been on, how would you describe that? For me, a lot of it is purely based on my personality. My personality is that curious kitten, right? And
Like, what does that do? How can we do that? How can we make that better? And in project management, there's a concept called the Kaizen, which is the consistent improvement, right? How do we constantly improve what we're doing? It was a concept introduced by Toyota for quality assurance when Toyota had all the issues with braking systems, I believe in the 90s. It was a concept that they said, okay, how do we make it better, right? So how do we continuously improve our product and our production and our processes? And it could be something as simple as like how you lay your desk out, right? Do you have to turn to get to your files, or can you just look to your left, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think of it as a fabrication table, do we have all the parts and pieces we need? And when the team goes on break, do we have someone goes in there and restocks the hardware and charges the tools while the team is on break? So there's efficiencies to be gained across the board. And how do we do that in construction, and how do we do that in AV project management? There's a lot to be learned, right? The construction project management is at a different level than AV project management, and we have to really do some work to bring AV project management up to, I'd say, up to today construction project management standards, whether that's tooling, processes and software, or is that just mindset, right? Is it that sort of like, let's just go in there and get it done? Or do we really plan what we're doing? There's arguments to be made for both, right? There's a case for both, but
and cultural differences woven into that conversation as well. I was talking with somebody recently, unrelated to the industry, unrelated to the companies in the industry, and he was saying that there was a QA difference in America than there was in the parent country of what was leaving the assembly line. And he ended up leaving the job because he couldn't get to the management mindset and say, hey, you guys are letting things slip off the line that aren't passing QA. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being a part of a similar issue that this company had about 20 years ago. And it's interesting because it makes me proud to be on the American side of a company, because there is an element that we bring that is that bold, curious professional side. There's plenty of other versions of American mindsets that show up as well, but I'm going to stay on the positive note.
Stick to the parts you like.
Yeah, parts I like. And I think it adds a bit of accountability to both sides too. Mm-hmm. And one thing that's pretty special to me about having had experience so far in my career with two different companies that were foreign based is that there's this really unique sweet spot of camaraderie that when you get to that level, it's a lot more, I don't want to say kinder, but just, and I don't want to say easier, but relaxed to work with each other because there's more understanding. There's more understanding, and it's being said for everybody who's involved to understand.
The curiosity factor, right? And I always like working with other curious people because curious people ask why, and mm-hmm. asking why is inherently collaborative.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Why are we doing it that way? Why do you do it that way? Right. And then you start to understand the differences, even phrase, the turn of a phrase in the US versus the UK. I mean, we both speak English-ish. I'm from Queens. I don't know if I speak English, but my accent comes out when I'm yelling. But there's when you say you want to table something in the US, let's table that idea right now. In the US, that means let's just move on. We'll leave that on the table. In the UK, that's let's table it, let's discuss it.
Oh, interesting.
It's the same words, but a different meaning culturally. So, and having that mind, right, that asked that question to figure it out, like, oh, why, what is that difference? My brother is an archaeologist, and he works a lot in Iceland and northern Scotland. And he had a issue once where he'd said something about his work pants, and in the UK, pants is underwear.
Oh boy.
Oh,
right? So he was like, I think I offended, like, somebody was like, you have special pants just for work? And he was like, well, yeah, because they're cargo pants and they have pockets, so sorry to tell your story on you, Frank, but
Can you imagine? How
But-
funny.
somebody being like, I have work underwear. Oh my God. The way I would be like, I'm not paid enough to know this. Like,
right? But the conversation, the collaboration that entails is hilarious. But the idea of like asking the question, right, and saying,
Right.
"Oh, how do you guys do this?" or "How do you do this?" And I don't know if it's because of the industries that I've worked in. I've done construction in China. I've done construction in Europe. I've done construction in New York. I've done construction in Philly, in Florida, and LA. Right, like. Name a place and we could talk about the cultural differences of
Right.
doing construction work. And I mean, the work I've done in Toronto versus the work I've done in Italy, in Naples, right? Like,
this,
big
this,
difference.
this may be a bit of a sidebar, but from what you're saying, I have two questions. One, what are some suggestions and advice you can give our listeners on how to communicate with people with the cultural differences and work as a team? Because more and more we have, teams all over virtually or whatever and whatnot. That's the first one. And the second one, as a project management pro, if you will, how do you manage all of your stuff? Do you have a system? I love knowing how people like stay organized at work because it's so interesting what people use, what techniques. Did you say, do you have ADHD?
I do.
Yeah. So that also is an element of like, okay, how are you doing that? What
Organizing.
works for
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
That's my superpower. My superpower is that I can jump from topic to topic really quickly. But it also means that I can read a room and the vibe that I get from things will determine how I behave in that situation.
Mhm.
It's not always good. It's not always been a positive in my past, but you learn how to make that a positive. You learn how to make that a superpower. And we talk about in Project Management Institute, PMI, who is a PMP certification and other, agility certifications. They call it power skills. Traditionally, we would have called it soft skills, but I like the idea of power skills because as a project manager, your communication, your relationship building skills, that's what brings the collaboration together. As a project manager, I'm a facilitator. I don't answer the hard questions, right? I kind of have to ask the hard questions. And how do we do this? And how do we do that? And how should we build this? And how should we put this together? And then I build the strategic plan and I build the communication. But I also build the relationships. People have to come to me with the problem, right? And I always tell the people that work on my teams, I'm like, I want to be the first person you call, whether it worked or it didn't work. I want to be the first person who gets that call because I'm not going to take it out on you ever. That is never my point, right? Like we're in this together. We have to do this as a team and people have to trust you, right? And you have to build relationships for that. And working in multicultural projects, you have to have an understanding of that culture, right? And an acceptance of that culture. Did I love every time, working in Italy and I was being told, domani, signore, domani, which means tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow. Lady, we'll do it tomorrow. And it's like, well, no, really, that's supposed to be done today, right? And you just have to go, you know what? I have to this is how work is here. So there's an element of that. It is what it is, right? It is what it is.
Even I was at a networking event the other month, and you can also you could just tell who's from the East Coast and who's from the West. Just by their demeanor too, and it's so interesting just talking to them about different projects and seeing how how they interact with it, or even how they dress, or it's so
we use our hands a lot more on the East Coast than we do on the West.
Why do you think I have fidget spinners everywhere, Carol?
I have a pen.
I used to gesticulate like a good old Italian, and people told me that it was too much, and so I'm like, okay, now what do I do with my hands? I don't know.
Bring your hands back. I want to see all the movement.
And bring the hands back. And I grew up again, hands. My dad always told us these great tricks, like in a museum, just hold your hands behind your back and then you won't touch anything.
For real. But you know what I ended up
having
having to do still, even with that, is if I go out, I wear rings.
So you
Because
play, yeah, I play with
if
my
I
wedding
do
ring
have
all the
to,
time.
you know,
Yeah.
settle my hands, I can still be like, oh.
But Lex, that's a great opportunity to be like, then you can start talking about, so people love to talk about themselves, right? I mean, that's why podcast exists, right? That's why I said yes. But there's when you're sitting before the meeting, like you can ask someone, oh, where are you from? Have you been to the project site? Have you done that? Right? It doesn't always have to be business, right? And I'm not saying you need to go out for drinks and you need to send each other Christmas cards, right? But like, I still have folks that I've worked with who I get Christmas cards from, and I send Christmas cards to. Like, here's a picture of my son. Like, but it's possible to do that. And you do that in small steps, right? And building that connection to people and building that relationship. It's really not that hard as human beings. Is what we do inherently.
And I feel like it's so important to like keep your eyes open to patterns so you start learning the cultural differences and then be able to recognize it. And then more, I don't know if selfishly is the right word, but be able to code switch, which I feel like can be so important sometimes when you're just trying to talk, when you're working on a project, being able to code switch and use the same vocabulary, use the same, kind of mimic that, I think is also an easier way to build a relationship and trust just from like a human point of view. You kind of subconsciously do that, but also just getting your point across. It's one of those things I'm like, the more I notice, I'm like trying to catalog it and I'm like, okay, this is important for next time. And this is how they like to communicate. I want to make sure to do that. Because definitely some people, some real East Coast don't really like the relaxed West Coast. So then switching code, I think earn respect a lot quicker and be able to show up more as an expert versus being full West Coast.
And you also, but you can find a connection if you have that chat with somebody, right? Like you can find a common ground. And sometimes that common ground is really cool, right? Like sometimes it's really interesting. When I worked for that HGTV show, we had a lot of Polish contractors, and my grandmother was Polish. And
cool.
We would laugh because the only time she ever spoke to us in Polish was when she was cursing at us. And like I only know curses in Polish, but my great uncle taught the dog commands in Polish. So if you wanted him
yeah.
You wanted the dog to give you paw, you had to say "Daj mi łapkę" instead of "give me paw," so I know dog commands and curses, right, in Polish. But
amazing set of vocabulary.
But the idea is that like now all of a sudden I was like their Polish little sister, right? And like, cool. But you build that connection. And a lot of times on the East Coast, because we are, ethnocentricity in the East Coast is still where it's at, right? Especially in New York, you have Greek neighborhoods, you have, East Indian neighborhoods, you have Irish neighborhoods, you have, Chinese neighborhoods, and finding that like that little basis of connection is kind of, it makes it a little more like coming home, right? Like you have that little connection that you're like, oh yeah, okay, I know this, or I really like this, or I've had wonderful coworkers, and one of the fun thing to do is share food.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny you say that because I was just thinking about Lex's question, her second question about like how we organize having ADD for our workplaces, and culturally speaking, that's different as well. So when I went over to an office, a headquarters office in Paris for a week once on a business trip, the idea of having at desk snacks was like not a thing, right? So like I have a whole like shelf over here of like some Planters peanuts, and then I have like fruit leather and like just a bottle of water. Like I have a whole like mini snack station because if I stay like nutritionally enriched, I could sit at my desk longer and work. And like over there, they have more of which I wish we had, and maybe I just don't walk in those circles, but they have more of a respect for eating and the time to go eat. So for instance, breakfasts and lunches and dinners, they're all longer and more enjoyable. The food's better, because they do go home and they do cook and they do eat their lunch and then they come back, right? Or they go to a restaurant that does that. And I need to do more of that. So anyways, to the point it was really interesting that even something simple like what you have at your desk at home is culturally different as well. And when I had an experience teaching earlier in my teaching career in the industry, I was teaching some people from Japan, and it was the first time I had ever really sat down next to a native Japanese person from Japan, and it was a really cool experience. And one of their cultural things is always giving gifts of thanks. And so I spent 3 days with them teaching them that particular manufacturer's piece of gear. And at the end of the week, they offered me gifts. Like they gave me a pen from Japan. They gave me this really cool USB converter adapter I still have because I was geeking out over it. And it's just really sweet, and then what was interesting when I had an experience in Korea was thanking my translator for translating for me for the whole week, inviting him and his family out to dinner at the last night was like a really big deal because it's not normal. Here in America, it's very normal. It's like, oh, hey, thanks for watching my dog. Here's a case of beer, right? Or thanks for whatever with, watching my kids for the week. Let's go. I'll take you guys all out for dinner or bring pizza to help people move, that kind of thing. And it's just very different. So even those gestures of appreciation and those signs of respect and the efficiencies in organizing a day and a project are also all very unique to the culture that you're working in. And I love Lex's point about remembering the thing or two, the tip for next conversation. Like, oh yeah, by the way, don't mention X, Y, and Z. Like I had to forever park and expire the phrase 10 ways to skin a cat because I realized it just does not transfer culturally, no matter who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, now I say multiple ways to accomplish the same goal. That's my
go. Yeah, it's a better translation.
Better translation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting, I think, in general. And it makes the job fun. I think too, for me, I would be a bit more bored if I didn't have the opportunity to connect with different cultures of people. And it's one of my takeaways from my traveling career that I'm having a hard time adjusting to even now is the fact that every week I was in a different state, right? Every week I was experiencing something different. And when I was traveling internationally, there would be a month, I'd be in America, and then the next 2 weeks I'd be in a different country. And it was just such an experience that helped me expand my knowledge and my enjoyment of life, and also how to accomplish the same goal across different mindsets. So it's just really unique experience.
It's funny too, because you get used to that flexibility, that agility, right? And you have the ability to bounce between cultures, and like that takes practice. You can't expect someone, right, to jump in right away. And I've made plenty of mistakes. I was working for a construction company, and we did a rollout of a store called Aquamar. It's a Brazilian clothing store, women's clothing store. And the architect came up from Brazil, and she was wonderful. She was amazing. And it's construction, and I was the only other girl in the office because construction. And her and I got along well. I speak zero Brazilian Portuguese. She spoke zero English. And it was the early days of Google Translate. So I'm talking 2009, 2010, something like that. So we kind of translated by Google Translate, but she wanted to use like reclaimed materials in the store. So we were talking in the early meetings, and my bosses were great. And they were all, my bosses were all South American. So but they didn't speak Portuguese. So they were kind of from everywhere. So they were kind of doing okay. And then she kind of looked at me, and they were trying to explain what she wanted, and they didn't quite get the reclaimed concept. And then she just kind of looked at me, and she went, anthropology. And she wanted it to look like anthropology. She wanted that reclaimed doors, reclaimed construction materials. So I was like, oh, anthropology, like we can do that, right? We figured that out and we built this great bond. And she was so sweet and she was so lovely. And at the end of the project, we gave her an architect Barbie because they had just come out with those that year. And she absolutely loved it. And she was so sweet. And she gave us all a gift the day she left. But in Brazil, you open gifts in front of people.
Uh-oh.
And we didn't do that.
Oh.
And I still feel bad about that to this day. And we were in New York, right? She wasn't necessarily expecting us to, but it would have been the polite thing to do, right? To open gifts in front of her. And she was so gracious about it. And we still actually email from time to time. You know, she was really wonderful to work with. So, but that's what I mean about relationship building. Like I was the one who figured out what she wanted because she said anthropology. And I was like, oh.
Were you able to answer the question? Did you answer the question? Did I miss it? Where you talked about how you organized your own?
So no, I didn't get to that yet. I don't. I'm a chaos monster.
How interesting.
I thrive on chaos. I have a notebook that I don't even think if somebody found this, they would be like, that person's absolutely certifiable. I make weird little notes for myself.
Okay, interesting.
But I always use gridded paper because that's from when I had to do like field sketches. Drawing, I would always use gridded paper, and that's just a habit I have because I like the corners. And then I can doodle and color squares while I'm in a boring meeting. I multitask my whole life, every day, all day long. I multitask. And it's a way I keep things in order. I have a son with special needs, so keeping up on his appointments, doctors, school, all kinds of things I have to keep in order. My husband and I have a shared calendar for him and for our events and weekend activities. And my son does horseback riding and he has baseball and swimming and all his PTs and feeding therapies, all kinds of things. So we're busy. We're a busy family. I'm a busy mama. But work stuff, I mean, I do things right away. That's really the best thing. There's that 2-minute rule, that frog rule, whatever. What is it? Swallow the frog?
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah. I don't know this. Tell me this.
Yeah. If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now.
I don't know how to explain it, but basically do the hardest thing first.
Yeah. And then if it's really fast, get it done. And then do the big one, right? And then
swallow the frog is a metaphorical phrase referring to eat the frog productivity method, which involves tackling the most difficult or important task first thing in the day.
Oh, okay.
Eat the frog. That's what it is. And
I
then
didn't know that there was a name. I did know that concept. Got it.
I like productivity concepts. Sometimes I use Pomodoro concepts. I
love a good Pomodoro.
I have a kitchen timer for my computer.
I'm like, this is the only way I can focus, I swear. Because it allows me to go full into hyper focus mode and not have to worry about the time getting away from me because the timer will remind me. Otherwise, I feel like I'm always like, oh, I have to like keep and maintain thoughts about everything while I'm doing it. And it just is so much better for deep work. I think I have timers in every room.
Yeah. I have one in the kitchen because I realized that was a key to me being successful in cooking. Yeah. Because if you know how when you start doing more complicated meals, you have multiple pots and pans running at the same time. And so if I have a timer for like each spot on the stove. So like this pot started at this time, this pan started at this time, and
you guys are good.
So it's like my kitchen is like a harmony of timers going off every time I'm cooking.
I love that. I love that.
I do. Because of working in live production, it takes a certain type of person to work in live production. Chrissy, you can attest to this too, right? Like you have to be some kind of
special kind of crazy.
You have to be a chaos goblin to be able to work in live production because things are never going to go smooth and you have to go now. So you might not go with plan A. You're probably at plan D, E, F by the time you get out and go. Yeah. And that's why folks burn out because it's like being an air traffic controller without the possibility of people dying. But and working in construction still has that kind of change and that chaos. And I feel like with my role, specifically my role these days, a lot of it is more meetings than task based. A lot of it is more meetings and then moving on to this and then having this conversation and then moving on to this. So my day to day during the day, when like particularly when my son is in school, is I just cram in all my meetings in the morning, and then after bedtime is like that can be focus time for me. So a lot of times,
okay,
yeah. So later in the day, I actually find it a little easier to focus, just because I don't have emails that are pinging. I have all my notifications are turned off on everything I own because I'm a kitten, and I will just be like,
yeah.
Oh, forget it. My phone is on silent all the time.
I have notifications. I also make sure the little red bubble doesn't. I take it off of everything.
Take it off.
I don't want to see that anywhere. My husband has one. It's like 12,000 emails. I'm like, immediately icky. I'm like, I will never look at your phone purely because of that.
Just the anxiety.
I've always wanted to try the minimalist skins that you can get on your cell phones, where it takes all the apps are the same color.
What about that? The dumb phone.
I really want to try that.
Oh, you know, I have my apps organized by spectrum, by color.
Oh, nice.
Because I like the aesthetic of it.
I used to do that. Yeah, it's so fun, right? Oh my god, that kept such a memory for me.
Like I have to remember that like this app is yellow.
What?
What's your memory, Lex, of color coding apps?
I used to do that. I used to color code all my apps, and then it doesn't make sense except for color. Like all the apps are for different things, and everyone was like, "Why would you do that?" I'm like, "It's pretty.
It makes me happy.
I know where everything is. That's all that matters."
It's like when you walk into the store, or you walk into like Ulta, and like all the nail polishes are all in spectrum, and I'm just like, yay! And I think it's my art school background, though. I think that's what.
Carol, every time Lex and I interview a guest that similarly has ADD, we have to ask you this question, and it's in regards to your silverware drawer. Are you little? Did you say little spoon?
Little spoon.
Oh! One day I will find a fellow ADDer that likes big forks and big spoons. One day.
No, because you can taste the fork and you can taste the spoon.
Yes.
The smaller the spoon of the fork, the less I can taste it.
Food is better off of little silverware. Yeah. Period.
My thing is I get more food in my mouth faster, so I get to spend less time eating because I hate eating.
No.
Oh, that's so interesting. Mine's the opposite. It's like so I can eat longer.
Yeah. I don't want to taste the metal. That's my
interesting.
It's too big in my mouth.
I can't use those like travel mugs because with the metal, like because then my coffee tastes like metal. Like I
feel you.
I'm also a studio potter. I have a studio in my garage. So
I'm jealous.
Oh, hey. People hanging out. I do a lot of wood-fired pottery and like alternative firings. So I also always feel like I'm cheating on ceramics when I use a metal cup, but I can taste the metal and I can't taste the.
That's also why I very much prefer drinking out of glass straws.
Glass straw.
I'm letting you know, this is the only material that does not interfere at all with taste. I can tolerate other straws, don't get me wrong, except for straws. They can go to HE double hockey sticks, but glass straws are where it's at. It's so good.
I'm going to research that because I'm currently in a straw deficit of my house, and I hate the metal ones because of the teeth.
Yeah,
and also like I've stabbed the top of my mouth too many times with the metal ones, and then I hate the plastic ones because eventually they'll get grody and they start tasting like all the stuff you've had in them, and I'm like at a loss. So I'm going to try some glass straws. That sounds
and if you like smaller straws, hummingbird straws are like tiny, like they're the same size but they're
like
tinier.
The coffee stirrers?
No, the whole, and it's not that tiny, but it's tinier than a regular straw. So think of it like a boba straw, a regular straw, a hummingbird straw, a coffee straw. Like
we have some silicone straws for my son, and those are pretty good.
Which one?
The what straw?
The silicone straws.
Oh yeah,
those are pretty good. I'm not a straw person though, so yeah, they're wobbly, but yeah. because I only drink coffee and club soda. Really is about it. By the way, this stuff.
Club soda. That's so grown up.
Strawberry bagel.
I always love when we get a chance to talk, Carol, because I take like 5,000 notes. I have so many notes right now. Like, oh, I got to go look up that thing. Oh, I got to go talk about that thing. Oh, hey, I got to go.
This is what I mean when I talk about being a chaos goblin. Like,
it's awesome. I love it so much.
It also does make sense. You, as a project manager, you're so like easy to talk to. I would feel a lot more confident with you coming in randomly and helping with a project if you weren't on our team. Like you have a great personality for it. So I understand how this could be how it's a really good fit for you.
It's about understanding people, right? And I'm not going to stand here and hate on anybody for how they dress or what their hair color is or what they look like, right? First off, I'm a New Yorker. I don't care, right? Like, that's great. I'm minding my business. Keep moving, right? But at the other point, I think there's an emotional intelligence that you have to have as a project manager, where you have to be able to critically think about things and have some really hard discussions sometimes. And that's not easy for me at all because I don't like being a bad guy. But if you push me, I'll never be the good guy either.
That's so
that's the Irish in me, though.
I think,
if you push me, I'll never be the good guy.
I think Chrissy's dog is telling us it's time.
She just did her big army crawl stretch of like, do I have to stay in this bed anymore?
She's like, this was a great conversation. Now I think I'm done with you along.
My cat is glaring at me through the French door glass, and he's just like,
It's time.
I can't get in there, and I want to get in there.
Carol, it's been amazing as usual, and thank you so much for coming on. And
you both are the best.
Thank you, and telling us your story and giving us some wonderful tips. I've taken so many notes. I'm excited to figure out what the title I'm going to end up with for this episode because it's like there's just so much to
right.
talk about. But...
something to do with chaos, maybe.
Chaos goblin.
I don't know. I love it.
The chaos goblin.
Chaos goblin. Well, I think we talked about this a while ago that the lead singer of Iron Maiden, his autobiography is called "What Does This Button Do?" And that's that curious nature. Like, what does this button do? And obviously, working in AV, there's plenty of buttons to push. What does this do?
What a tragedy when everything went to touch. I was like, y'all, you don't even know what you just did.
COVID happened, and then no one wanted to touch anything anymore. So
all the stupid little stylus touchers. I'm like, everyone gave them away. I'm like, okay, I have like 10 of these now.
What does this do?
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.
Bye.